I feel like I'm either going crazy or I've stumbled onto something I was never meant to see. Part of me wants someone to tell me there's a rational explanation for all of this. Another, much larger part of me knows there isn't. I just need to get this out, to put it in a place where it will exist outside of my own head. It started about 3 months ago. I was taking a cross-country bus, one of those marathon trips that lasts for more than a day. I do it a couple of times a year to visit family. It's cheaper than flying, and I've always found a strange kind of comfort in the liminality of it. The constant, low-level motion, the world blurring past the window, the feeling of being nowhere and everywhere at once. You're just a passenger, a temporary ghost in a metal tube, and for a little while, none of your real-life problems can touch you. This particular trip was the overnight leg. The bus was dark, save for the faint green glow of the dashboard and the occasional sweep of headlights from a passing car on the other side of the interstate. Most passengers were asleep, slumped in their seats in that boneless way people do on long journeys. The air was thick with the smell of stale air conditioning and the faint, sweet scent of someone's fast food dinner from hours earlier. The only sound was the deep, monotonous drone of the engine, a sound that usually lulls me to sleep. But I couldn't sleep this time. I was sitting in a window seat about halfway down the bus, watching the endless ribbon of asphalt disappear under us. We were in one of those vast, empty stretches of the country, the kind of place where the sky is so big and black it feels like it could swallow the world. There were no city lights on the horizon, no signs of civilization at all, just the highway, the scrubland stretching out on either side, and the stars. It was probably around 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when it happened. Up front, a single overhead light flicked on. I saw a young man, probably my age, early 20s, stand up and walk to the front of the bus. He had on a hoodie and a pair of bulky, old-school headphones. I'd noticed him when we boarded. He kept to himself, didn't talk to anyone. He just stared out the window, same as me. He spoke to the driver. I couldn't hear the words, just the low murmur of his voice. The driver, a heavy-set guy with a salt and pepper mustache, nodded slowly. He didn't seem surprised or annoyed. He just nodded. Then he slowed the bus down. The hiss of the air brakes was startlingly loud in the quiet cabin. A few people stirred, but no one woke up. The bus rolled to a complete stop on the shoulder of the empty interstate. The driver pulled a lever, and the doors folded open with a pneumatic sigh, letting in a rush of cool, dry night air that smelled of dust and distant rain. The kid with the headphones stepped off the bus. He didn't have any luggage, not even a backpack. He just stepped down onto the gravel shoulder and stood there for a moment, his back to us. The bus doors hissed shut, and with a lurch we started moving again. I watched him through the window as we pulled away. He didn't look back. He just started walking, not along the shoulder, but directly away from the road, into the pitch-black, featureless expanse. He walked in a straight, determined line like he knew exactly where he was going. Within seconds, the bus picked up speed, and he was just a silhouette. Then, he was a smudge. Then he was gone, completely absorbed by the darkness. The whole thing couldn't have taken more than a minute, but it left me with a profound and unsettling feeling. It was just so wrong. You don't just stop a bus in the literal middle of nowhere. There were no lights, no buildings, no crossroads, nothing. Why would anyone get off there? Where could he possibly be going, and why did the driver just let him? I looked around the bus. No one else seemed to have noticed or cared. The man across the aisle was snoring softly. The woman in front of me was buried under a blanket. I felt a weirdly urgent need for someone else to have seen it, to validate my own sense of disbelief. Then I saw something else. As I stared out the window into the darkness where the kid had vanished, I saw a flicker. It was incredibly faint, easy to miss. A tiny pulse of light, out in the blackness where he'd been walking. It wasn't a car headlight or a light from a house. It was a rhythmic, strobing pulse. It had no color I could name. It was just light, a sterile, white-gray flicker that seemed to suck the color out of the air around it. It blinked on and off, in a steady, hypnotic rhythm. It was a kind of movement, a visual beat in the silent, empty landscape. I watched it until the bus rounded a long, gentle curve in the highway, and the darkness became absolute again. I didn't sleep for the rest of the trip. My mind was a tangled mess of questions. When we finally pulled into the terminal in the gray light of dawn, I waited for everyone to get off, and then I went up to the driver. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound casual. "Back there a few hours ago we stopped to let a guy off. I was just curious. What was out there? Is there a town or something I couldn't see?" The driver was finishing up his paperwork. He didn't look at me. "It's a designated stop," he grunted. "A designated stop?" I pressed. There was nothing there. I didn't see a sign or anything. He finally looked up, and his eyes were tired and flat. "Some folks live way out. We stop for them. It's on the route." His tone was final. It was a brick wall, but I knew he was lying. There was no way that was a designated stop. There was nothing there to designate. The way he said it, practiced answer, it was clear he'd been asked before. I thanked him and got off the bus, the feeling of unease now a hard knot in my stomach. For the next few weeks, I tried to forget about it. I went about my visit, spent time with my family, and tried to convince myself it was just one of those weird, unexplainable road trip stories. Maybe the kid was meeting someone. Maybe he was an eccentric who liked to camp in the desert. Maybe the light was from an airplane, or a radio tower I couldn't see properly. But I couldn't shake it. The image of him walking into that crushing darkness, and the silent, colorless pulse of that light, it was burned into my memory. When I got home, the obsession took root. I started searching online. My first searches were vague and useless. Bus stopping in middle of nowhere. Man walks into desert at night. Strange lights on interstate. I got thousands of results, all of them unrelated. UFO sightings, ghost stories, conspiracy theories. Nothing that matched the specific, mundane strangeness of what I had witnessed. I realized I needed to be more specific. I knew the bus route, and I had a rough idea of the time, so I could estimate the location, a long, desolate stretch of highway between two state lines. I started searching for missing persons cases. I typed in the name of the state, the county, and the word missing. I set the date range for the last 5 years, and that's when I found him. Not the kid from my bus, but another one, a college student who had vanished 2 years prior. He was last seen boarding the exact same bus route I had been on. His family said he had become distant and withdrawn in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. He told a friend he kept hearing a faint music that no one else could hear, and he felt drawn to the west. His abandoned car was found at the bus station in the city where I'd started my journey. He was never seen again. My blood ran cold. I kept digging. I refined my search terms. Missing, bus route, interstate number, hearing things. I found another. A woman in her 30s, 3 years ago. She'd left a note for her husband saying she had to go, that she was being called home to a place she'd never been. She was last seen on a bus ticket manifest for the same overnight route. Another, a teenage runaway from 4 years back. His friend told police that the boy had become obsessed with a pattern of static he claimed to hear on the radio between stations, and that he said it was a map. I found 12 of them, 12 missing persons cases spanning the last decade, all connected to that same stretch of road. The details varied, but the core elements were always there. A sudden, uncharacteristic need to travel that specific route. A growing obsession with a sound, or a hum, or a song that no one else could perceive. A sense of being drawn, or called. They were all different ages, different backgrounds, but they were all last seen heading into that same vast, empty darkness. I felt sick. I wasn't crazy. What I saw was real. It was a pattern. The kid wasn't the first. The fear should have been enough to make me stop, to delete my search history, burn my bus ticket, and never think about it again. Any sane person would have walked away, but I couldn't. The questions were too loud. What was that light? What was the sound they were all hearing? What was happening to these people? The mystery of it was a hook that had sunk deep into me. I felt like I had pulled back a curtain just a single inch and seen something I shouldn't have. And now I was compelled to see what was on the rest of the stage. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back. But this time, I would be prepared. I spent the next month gathering equipment. I emptied a good chunk of my savings. I bought a high-end DSLR camera known for its low-light video capabilities and a professional-grade shotgun microphone designed to capture sound from a distance. I also bought a parabolic microphone dish to focus on specific, faint audio sources. I got a new laptop with powerful editing software and a set of noise-canceling headphones, the best I could afford. I felt like a storm chaser, but I was chasing a void. 2 weeks ago, I booked my ticket, the same route, the same overnight schedule. As I packed my bag with the equipment, my hands were shaking. A part of my brain was screaming at me, calling me an idiot, telling me to stop. But the compulsion to know was stronger than the fear. The first few hours of the bus ride were agonizing. Every bump in the road made me jump. I sat in the same seat as before, by the window, my bag of equipment clutched on my lap like a holy relic. The bus was half full, a familiar mix of sleepy travelers and quiet loners. I scanned their faces, looking for the same dazed, disconnected expression I'd seen on the kid, but everyone just looked tired. As night fell and we entered that same desolate stretch of highway, my heart sank. I watched the mile markers, trying to pinpoint the exact spot. The landscape outside was a featureless, inky black canvas. My hands grew sweaty. Maybe it wouldn't happen this time. Maybe it was a fluke, a one-in-a-million thing I just happened to see. I almost started to relax, telling myself I had wasted my money and my time on a paranoid fantasy. And then I saw it. The glow of the single overhead light at the front of the bus. My breath hitched in my throat. This time it was a woman. She looked to be in her late 40s, dressed in plain, practical clothes. She had short graying hair and a blank, placid look on her face. She walked to the driver, her steps slow and even. She murmured something. The driver nodded that same slow, indifferent nod. The bus began to slow down. The hiss of the air brakes cut through the drone of the engine. This was it. My hands moved automatically, a sequence I had practiced a dozen times in my apartment. I pulled out the camera, flicked it to video mode, and adjusted the low-light settings. I unzipped my bag, grabbed the shotgun mic, and plugged it in. The bus rolled to a stop on the shoulder. The doors sighed open. The woman stepped off without a word, without a bag, without a backward glance. The doors closed. The bus began to move. I pressed the camera lens against the cool glass of the window. I hit record. Through the viewfinder, I saw her, a lone figure walking directly away from the road, just like the kid. She moved with that same unnerving, dreamlike purpose. I kept the camera on her as she shrank into the distance, a small dark shape against an even darker background. And then I saw the light, faint at first, then stronger. The same colorless, strobing pulse. It was exactly where she was walking. I zoomed in as much as I could, but the digital zoom just turned the image into a pixelated mess. The light was just a blinking dot, but it was there. I was recording it. I swung the shotgun mic towards the sound source, or rather, where the light was. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and plugged them into the camera's audio monitor. At first, all I could hear was the rumble of the bus and the whisper of the wind against the microphone. I held my breath, concentrating, and then I heard it. It wasn't loud. It was so quiet, buried deep beneath the other sounds. A hum, a low, throbbing, resonant hum. It was a single, impossibly deep note that seemed to vibrate in my bones more than my eardrums. It was the kind of frequency you feel in your chest cavity, and the feeling it produced, that was the most terrifying part. I was expecting something jarring, something sinister or discordant, but this was the opposite. As the hum filled my headphones, a wave of profound peace washed over me. The anxiety that had been coiling in my gut for weeks just dissolved. My racing heart slowed to a steady, calm beat. I felt a sense of tranquility, of rightness, that I have never felt in my entire life. It felt like coming home after a long, hard journey. It felt like being understood. It felt like belonging. The irrationality of it was what scared me. My logical mind was screaming in panic, screaming that this was wrong, that this feeling was an anesthetic, a lure. But the emotional part of my brain, the part that was soaking in that beautiful, peaceful hum, didn't care. It just wanted more. I kept recording for as long as I could, until the light and the sound faded into the distance. I finally stopped the recording and slumped back in my seat, my body trembling. The feeling of peace slowly receded, leaving behind a cold, terrifying residue. I took off the headphones, and the familiar, mundane drone of the bus engine sounded harsh and ugly in comparison. I didn't dare listen to the recording again on the bus. I packed the equipment away carefully, my hands still shaking. I spent the rest of the journey in a state of high alert, a deep-seated dread warring with the memory of that unnatural calm. When I got home, I locked my door, drew my blinds, and imported the files to my laptop. My sanctuary, my own apartment, suddenly felt flimsy and unsafe. First, the video. I played it back on my large monitor. It was just as I remembered. The dark figure walking, the faint, strobing light. I used the software to enhance the footage, boosting the brightness, sharpening the contrast. The figure remained an indistinct shape, but the light was clearer now. I went frame by frame. It wasn't just a simple on and off blink. It was a pattern, a complex shifting geometric pattern. The light was a structure of light, impossibly intricate, that was folding and unfolding in on itself. It was symmetrical, mathematical. It was a language written in pulses of non-color. Watching it, even on the screen, was mesmerizing. My eyes traced the shifting lines, and I felt a strange sense of recognition, as if some ancient, dormant part of my brain knew what it was looking at, even if I consciously didn't. Then, the audio. I put on my best headphones and isolated the audio track. I filtered out the rumble of the bus and the hiss of the wind. I amplified the low-frequency hum, and there it was again, that deep, resonant thrum. Listening to it in the safety of my own home, without the immediate terror of being there, the effect was even more potent. The deep sense of peace rolled over me, warm and heavy like a blanket. My worries about my job, my rent, my future, they all seemed petty and insignificant. The knots of tension in my shoulders and neck uncoiled. I felt my jaw unclench. This is what they heard. This is what drew them in. It wasn't a malicious sound, it was the most beautiful, comforting sound I had ever heard. It promised an end to all struggle, all pain, all loneliness. It promised a place where you belonged. I listened to it for what felt like 10 minutes, but when I looked at the clock, an hour had passed. I had just been sitting there, staring at the black screen, lost in the sound. I shook myself out of it, a jolt of real fear finally cutting through the placid fog. This thing was dangerous. Not because it was scary, but because it wasn't. It was a siren song for the soul-weary. It was a trap laid with a velvet cushion. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. This was bigger than me. The police would think I'm insane, but someone had to see this, to hear this. Someone else had to know. So I uploaded the raw files to a secure cloud server. I edited the best clips, the clearest shot of the light pattern and the cleanest audio of the hum. And I started writing this post. It's taken me hours to get it all down, to try and explain the sequence of events and the feelings that came with them. But it's been 3 days since I made this post, and something has changed. I deleted all what I uploaded and got back to write more in this post. I couldn't stop myself. After I wrote the post, I told myself I was done with it. I would let the internet hive mind pick it apart and I would step away. But the memory of the sound, the feeling, it was like an itch in my brain I couldn't scratch. The silence in my apartment felt wrong, aggressive, and empty. I found myself listening to the audio clip again. Just for a second, I told myself. Just to remember what it was like. That second turned into minutes. The minutes turned into hours. I've had the audio playing on a loop. At first, I was scared. I fought it. But after a while, the fear just faded. It was replaced by something else. Understanding. The peace it brings is a clarification. It strips away all the useless noise of modern life. The anxiety, the ambition, the constant nagging feeling of not being enough. All of that is static. And the video, the pattern of light. I've been watching that on a loop too. The audio and the video are connected. The throbbing of the hum is the rhythm of the light's pulse. They are two parts of the same whole, a single piece of communication. And I understand it now. My brain just needed time to adjust, to learn the language. I can see it so clearly. The way the lines intersect, the way the geometry blossoms and retracts. I don't know why I was so scared. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's an invitation. I was wrong about what I saw. Those people, the ones who were missing, were just pilgrims. The pattern makes sense now. It's a map. The shifting lines show a path through space itself. It's a key, a sequence to unlock something. It's a home. That's the only word for it. A place where all the broken pieces of you fit together perfectly. A place of total, absolute belonging. I've been living my whole life in a gray, fuzzy world, and for the first time, I can hear the music and see the light in perfect clarity. Everything else feels like a dream. This is the only real thing. I just bought a one-way bus ticket. The next overnight trip leaves in a few hours. I have to go back. I have to see it for myself.